I took my girlfriend out to the cinema the other night to watch a film she wanted to watch. It was called After We Collide.
What do you think of when you hear the word fan fiction?
You'd be like, hey, Harry, you want to meet me? I wrote 7 books about you.
Do you think of young girls sitting in dark bedrooms, their faces illuminated by the sinful glow of whatever copyrighted debauchery they're reading next?
There was this widespread fan fiction online that envisioned Harry Styles and Louis Tomlinson hooking up.
The embarrassed, uncomfortable faces of celebrities who are confronted with the knowledge that strangers are writing explicit content using their likeness.
Or because when he looked at his own body, he knew it was identical to Cole's. It's not true, by the way.
Or the startling and abrupt bestsellers previously marketed on amateur sites for various fandoms, now finding their way into the forefront of the public consciousness.
E.L. James, the author of 50 Shades of Grey.
10 books published, 11 million copies sold worldwide.
What is it about fan fictions that make the world tick, tick, tick?
I get so many comments saying that my microphone is too close and that it feels like I'm whispering into your ears like I'm the Yin Yang twins.
Yeah, you doing, love mama? Let me whisper in your ear.
Which I've never personally noticed, but now can't stop thinking about. So as Haley Elizabeth once said, thanks for making me insecure. I'm kidding. I'm just a soft-spoken person with no vocal awareness. Like right now, I think I'm talking really loud.
Trust me, you're not.
But I can assure you there's about 1 million more people out there who think I'm whispering. I'll try harder to project my voice in the future, but just remember, we all can't be Mr. Beast. The term fanfiction comes with a lot of baggage, both fictional and reality-based. It's something that, in my time, was whispered about between friends, read in secret during class, and written at the lunch table on your slide-up phone. It was pure, unadulterated filth that kept an entire generation up late at night, eyes crusty and heart racing. For many, it was an introduction to sex and sexuality. It was a way to wind down after a long day, a way to build lifelong connections, start a hobby, and explore your interests. It was an experience. However chaotic and damaging that experience may have been, is up for debate. I have read Harry Styles fanfiction, Niall Horan fanfiction, Louis Tomlinson fanfiction, BTS fanfiction, yes, the whole group, standalone Jung Ho-seok fanfiction, Voldemort fanfiction, before he lost the hairline and nose, so it was more so Christian Coulson in Chamber of Secrets fanfiction. Stop looking at me like that. 90s Dave Grohl fanfiction, Vic Fuentes fanfiction. A lot of Vic Fuentes fanfiction, actually. There were periods of time where I didn't even go outside to touch grass. That's how much Vic Fuentes fanfiction I was reading. What number am I on? And I have even tried my hardest to find Jeff Goldblum fanfiction because I'm a menace to society and thrive off of being annoying and disturbed. Even as I fall asleep at night, I have to imagine some complex storyline involving me and whatever celebrity crush I'm nursing at the moment, just to drift off happily. I'm sorry, but I feel like you're still judging me about the Voldemort thing, and if we're going to get any further into the video, you're gonna have to let that one go. The point is, fanfiction prompts a response wherever it goes. Whether that response is positive or whether it is full of disgust, one thing remains true. Fanfiction has left its retina burning mark on pop culture, and I'll tell you right now, it is something from which we will never recover. Fanfiction feels like one of those modern inventions we can blame on Generation Z, like TikTok dancers and faceless Minecraft YouTubers. But it was actually around long before Gen Z had a chance to muck everything up like we apparently always do.
Well, here's the thing, Gen Z. Millennials shouldn't be trying to dress like 14, 15, 16-year-olds. And I hope that when you are 28, 29, 30, you're not trying to dress like 14, 16, 15, 16-year-olds. Maybe you just shut up because they shouldn't be. You should be actually worried about people. You know what? No, you just keep your opinions to yourself because you're literally 6 years old. You're 12. You don't know nothing. You don't even know.
Shannon Chamberlain, author of Fanfiction Was Just as in the 1700s as it is today, fantastic title by the way, states that fanfics have technically been around for centuries. There's just a very thin distinction between fanfiction we're used to and fanfiction of bygone eras. In order for what I'm about to say to make sense, we have to define the word fanfiction and the word pastiche. According to Wikipedia, the most reputable site on the internet, fanfiction is defined as fictional writing written in an amateur capacity as fans, unauthorized by but based on an existing work of fiction. The author uses copyrighted characters, settings, or other intellectual properties from the original creators as a basis for their writing. The key word there is amateur. If you need me to use it in a sentence, all the people in my comment section leaving uninspiring and unoriginal mean comments are amateurs. Pastiche, on the other hand, refers to, quote, a literary piece that imitates a famous literary work by another author. It can also use copyrighted characters, settings, and intellectual properties from the original source. But the important distinction is the word amateur is missing from that definition and instead replaced by the phrase literary piece. Very highbrow in its word choice. Literary piece.
Blood orange. She's so pretentious. Shut up, it's red.
Pastiche is a term that causes a stir in the minds of people familiar with the pastiche versus fan fiction debate and rouses memories of class division and hobby shaming because some people, not all, like to use pastiche as a way to be considered more superior or professional compared to the amateur foolishness of fanfic writers. These sorts of people consider classic literary works like Paradise Lost by John Milton and Inferno by Dante as respective pastiches of biblical and mythological influences. But in fact, they are both Bible fanfictions. Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare is also a fanfiction based on a play by Arthur Brooke titled The Tragical History of Romeo and Juliet. Or it's just art theft. There's a very thin line between that as well. So is The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas, which takes its titular characters from a book called Memoirs de Monsieur d'Argenton. Argenton.
Mémoire de Monsieur d'Artagnan.
Your literary faves are probably fanfictions too. It all comes down to semantics. That is the point Shannon Chamberlain is making when she says that fanfiction has been around for centuries. It was just viewed as literature rather than amateur fan writings on the internet. Jane Austen was an author whose work was especially transformed and rewritten by fans in the 19th century. And Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes has made its way into numerous renditions of detective books and spicy modern fan fictions of today. But in order to bridge that gap between Jane Austen fans creating unofficial sequels to her novels and angsty John Locke fics permeating Wattpad, we must look at the creation of Star Trek. Star Trek is a science fiction franchise created in 1966 by Gene Roddenberry. Like most old things in pop culture, it has been reworked and recycled and remade just about a gazillion times since its release. During its first run in the 1960s, it wasn't as big as a cultural phenomenon as it's known to be now, and was canceled within the first 3 seasons by the end of the decade. However, the relatively modest success of the initial run didn't stop Star Trek fans, known as Trekkies or Trekkers, from spurring an entire movement. The connection we have between fanfiction and fandoms today, rather than between literary authors and other literary works, is all thanks to the Star Trek fandom. So in a really roundabout way, you can blame Star Trek for 50 Shades of Grey. Trekkies began publishing fanzines in the 1960s using offset printing and mimography and sold these zines either through postage or at conventions for a small fee. According to Joan Marie Verba, Star Trek fanzines came into being a year after Star Trek did. The people who wrote for fanzines, drew art for them, edited them, and published them, put a lot of love and toil into them. Fanzines, including newsletters, kept fans in touch with each other all over the world, when fans had few other ways to communicate. These publications allowed participation in Star Trek fandom by fans who did not know any other Star Trek fans in their community. In the 1970s, Star Trek became a cult classic despite the lack of new episodes, and the creator, Gene Roddenberry, estimated that in 1968, at least 10,000 people read or wrote fanzines. And then the internet happened. The internet is both a blessing and a curse. Without it, you wouldn't be able to watch quality content like my videos for free, no less. But with the internet, you also have to see things like this.
Do you want to punish me right now?
Yes. I want to punish you right now.
And Voldemort fanfiction. But one is definitely worse than the other, and it's definitely not Christian Coulson, no matter what y'all will try to bully me into.
Girl, shut up already.
Fine. Roll the transition. I think the main reason modern fanfiction is given such a hard time on the internet is because, one, it's a hobby enjoyed mainly by young girls and women, which, with a track record like that, it's easy to conclude that society just hates things that brings us joy. Two, there is a very reasonable and understandable belief that writing such content using real people as your characters can be a bit disconcerting, especially for the real-life people who stumble across it or have it uncomfortably relate to them during public interviews. But the third reason is the reason I want to focus on for my own sadomasochistic benefit, and that is the case of the chaotic climate of killer, kidnapping, and cocky creatures. Let me explain. There are many genres when it comes to fan fiction. There's angst, there's fluff, there's smut, there's AUs, there's reader inserts, there's self-inserts, meet cutes, and Howl Pendragon fanfictions based off of Howl's Moving Castle. And you're telling me I couldn't find Jeff Goldblum fanfiction? When I was a youth, fanfiction was permeated by my parents sold me to One Direction stories and bad boy, dark hairy, tattoo smoking asshole, and goody two-shoes girl cures him tropes. You couldn't log onto Wattpad, or if you were a real one, Quote-V or Quotev, without seeing some 50 Shades meets Harry Potter meets Super Hulakian Hannibal Teen Wolf Hunger Games horror story with a romance subplot, of course. Stories like My Immortal, which really lives up to its name because we all try to forget it and it just won't go away. Dark and Dark's subpar cousin, After, were all infamous for their notoriously convoluted plot lines and sexy yet borderline abusive leading men. Some are a bit more notorious than others for reasons I simply cannot cover in one video, but you get it. I will say, however, that the dark underbelly of fanfic culture, the one that normalizes and even romanticizes mean and insensitive and abusive partners, can do more harm than good for young, impressionable audiences. I remember when I did my Twilight is a psychological thriller, not a love story video, and said that the romance between Bella and Edward was dangerous to young people who may look up to their relationship. People in the comments were saying,
there are people who base their idea of romance on books and movies. I feel sorry for them.
Well, yeah, and you base your idea of romance and love on your parents who have divorced and remarried 3 times before ultimately realizing they no longer love each other, not before scarring you for life with their incessant 3 a.m. arguing and obnoxiously loud affairs with other people while you're home pretending to sleep. You think you're free from the grip of toxic romantic examples? Nonetheless, fanfiction writers have nailed the Kafka-esque nature of this genre. These stories are utterly bizarre, illogical, and macabre, with little sprinkles of sexiness thrown in there and a plain character you can project all of your own nightmarish personality traits onto. This genre of fanfiction, the chaotic climate of killer, kidnapping, and cocky creatures, is what the end of a Shakespeare tragedy would look like if a shirtless corpse husband seduced Juliet after she woke up and found Romeo no Morio. And if you don't believe me and need some form of proof that it is that bad, good luck getting through the next 5 minutes. Shanspeare presents a dramatic retelling of her favorite chapters of the worst fanfictions ever written. Scenes contain grammar grammar mistakes, confusing plots, weird men who deserve to get slapped in the face with a restraining order, and general sexiness. Well, things 12-year-old me would have found sexy, but a 22-year-old me has to hold back vomit for. As the author of My Immortal once said, some of this chapter is extremely scray. Viewer excretion is advised. I'm in my car because I refuse to read this in any environment where my neighbors or God can hear me. And it's scientifically proven that God can't hear through steel and aluminum. And I need a safe place to scream. This is My Immortal, Chapter 17. I honestly cannot tell you the plot of what has happened so far because I don't know what the fuck's going on. Like, genuinely. Chapter 17. Tom Riddle gave us some clothes and stuff for free. He said he would help us with makeup if he wanted, because he was really into fashion and stuff. He's bisexual. Hagrid kept shooting at us to come back to Hogwarts. WTF, Hagrid? I shouted angrily. Well, anyway, Willow came. Hey bitch, you look kawaii, she said. Yeah, but not as kawaii as you, I answered Yeah, but not as kawaii as you, I answered sadly, because Willow's really pretty and everything. She was wearing a short black corset thingy with blood red lace on it and a black blood red miniskirt, leather fishnets, and black pointy boots that showed off how pale she was. She had a really nice body with big bobs and everything. So are you going to the concert with Draco? She asked. Yeah, I said happily. I'm going with Diablo, she answered happily. Well, anyway, Draco and Diablo came. They were both looking extremely hot and sexy, and you could tell they thought we were hot too. Diablo was wearing a black t-shirt that said 666 on it. He was wearing tons of makeup just like Marilyn Manson. Draco was wearing black leather pants, a gothic black Good Charlotte shirt, and black Vans he got from the Warp Tower. Bloody Mart was going to the concert with Dracula. Dracula used to be called Navel, but it turned out he was kidnapped at birth and his real family were vampires. They died in a car crash. Navel converted to Satanism and he went goth. He was in Slytherin now. He was wearing a black Warp t-shirt, black jeans and shoes, and black hair with red streaks in it. Well, anyway, we all went to Draco's black Mercy Benz. Get it? 'Cause we did pot, coke, and crack. Draco and I made out. We made fun of those stupid fucking preps. Gerard was the sexiest guy ever. He was really skinny and he had an amazing ethnic voice. We moshed to Helena and some odder songs. Suddenly, Gerard pulled off his mask. So did the other members. I gasped. It wasn't Gerard at all. It was an ugly, preppy man with no nose and red eyes. Everyone ran away but me and Draco. It was Voldemort and the Death Dealers. You moronic idiots, he shooted angstily. Ennaby, I told you to kill vampire. Thou have failed. And now I shall kill thou and Draco. No, no, please, we begged sadly, but he took out his knife. Suddenly, a gothic old man flew in on his broomstick. He had a long black hair and a long black bread. He was wearing a black robe that said Avril Lavigne on the back. Booty shorts that say Avril Lavigne on the back. He shot at a spell and Voldemort ran away. It was Dumbledore. So yeah, that's chapter fucking 17. I fucking hate it here. That was the best thing I've ever read in my life. Here's Dark. Dark is a Harry Styles fan fiction first published in 2012. It follows the main character, Beau, and her dark love interest, Harry Styles. Harry is the type of leading man that should have been issued a restraining order 3 seconds into meeting. Might as well call him Edward Cullen. Okay, for context, this scene is the first chapter. The main character, Beau, is at a club. She's clubbing it up. She's having a good time. And she is like fucking assaulted, basically. This is Dark. Alright, my pulse could be heard in my ears, mouth becoming dry. I stood frozen to the spot as the intimidating height of a male shadowed over me. My nervous eyes traveled up the length of his body, my fingers clutching round my cup a little tighter. His jeans clung perfectly to his lower half, a white t-shirt adorning his torso. I was yet to properly meet the dark focus I knew was trained on my face. Dance with me. He spoke in a raspy voice. I didn't have time to respond before he tugged me away, the cup I was holding dropping and spilling to the floor. A large palm was placed on my lower back, forcing me forward into his body. My hand flew up to his chest to stop him from pressing into him. His rough actions left me utterly speechless. I've never been treated like this before. Girl, somebody call 911. My fingers were clasped, the currently unnamed male encouraging my hand around the back of his neck. I boldly looked up, stunned to see a pair of sparkling green eyes peering down at me. They were almost a jade color, but I soon shook off the intriguing sparks running through my body. What's your name, beautiful? Bo, I stuttered. He smiled down at me, his overpowering presence traveling to my ear. I'm Harry, he hotly whispered. Before he withdrew, the fullness of his lips pressed to the spot just below my ear. My eyes fluttered. By the way, she doesn't know him. I like you, he smirked. You're so innocent. His dark gaze fell down to my chest. Taking advantage of his height, he indulged in the view down my top. My fingers dropped from where I held his nape. The urge to redden his cheek with my palm was growing, but I restrained, still fearful of the towering male. My hands rose up to shove him away, but he caught hold of my wrist. Now, he huskily spoke. Harry brought my arms down to my sides in his firm hold. I flinched as he took his time to run a warm touch down my back. His long fingers wriggled into the back pocket of my jeans, and I soon realized he was searching for my phone. His hand lingered, and it became clear that wasn't his only objective. My backside was tightly squeezed before the item of interest was taken from my jeans. The strained whimper that escaped my parted lips caused his to quirk up in a grin. He's groping her. He's filling her up. She says, stop. He says, I don't think so, baby. We're gonna have some fun. My hand is shaking with unbridled rage, by the way. After that... Oh, wait. She slaps him because she didn't want him touching her, and he says, I can tell you're going to be a challenge. He almost growled. I like that. She goes home, gets ready for bed. He texts her and says, you shouldn't have undressed in front of the window. She goes to the window and sees that he was watching her. That was dark. And finally, I couldn't decide what kind of fan fiction to end off on to really encapsulate the dark, brooding, borderline, terrible, creepy vibe I'm trying to prove exists within the realm of fan fiction. But then I remembered 50 Shades of Grey was a Twilight fan fiction, and I scoured the earth, baby, but I found it. The full 116-page novel, the kinky and borderline abusive love story between Bella and Edwin. Bella was out partying, and she calls Edward like in a drunken daze, and Edward comes out of nowhere at the bar that she's at. She's like, where the fuck did you find me at? How did you find me? And he's like, I tracked your cell phone, Isabella. Oh, of course he did. How's that possible? Is it legal? Stalker, my subconscious whispers at me through the cloud of tequila that's still floating in my brain. But somehow, because it's him, I don't mind. Stephanie Meyer, is that you? Blah, blah, blah. He rolls his eyes at me and takes me by the hand again and leads me to the bar. He's served immediately. He hands me a very large glass of iced water.
Drink.
She's fucking sipping. He's watching her intensely. She takes a fucking sip and he says, all of it! Now, do you believe me? These 3 fan fictions, all of different fandoms, all of different writing styles and plot lines, all feature some of the same intense, borderline, unbelievable tropes within them. The dark, clinical existence of Edward Cullen in Master of the Universe, the terrifying frat boy portrayal of Harry Styles, who quite frankly does not understand consent and personal space, and the demonic, blood-drinking caricatures known as Draco and Harry Vampire Potter in My Immortal. And as if these 3 pieces of work were not enough, which they are, more than, there are thousands more like them across thousands of more fandoms. What is the intrigue? What intrigued the millions of people who tuned into Dark, or the unknown number of readers who tuned into Master of the Universe in 2009? What made me indulge in Tom Riddle fanfiction as a teen?
Nothing can justify that.
I'm getting real sick of it here. In a nutshell, I would argue we were conditioned to like these sort of characters over time. The normalization of such assholery made it seem warranted and cool. Even though looking back on instances in pop culture or in real life itself, we may realize how utterly creepy and borderline abusive many of these relationships were. Many of the sources I skimmed through mentioned theories of reproductive lottery for the popularity of the bad boy persona, unconscious desires for hyper-masculine partners, and even a desire to flirt with the forbidden. And if changing Harry Potter into a vampiric pentagram scar-having goth who cries blood isn't forbidden, then... But these theories are more or less the same theories I read for my Rise of TED Talk video a couple weeks ago, and I don't think they wholly explain the notorious nature of the bad boy, good girl figure in our most beloved fanfictions. Psychologist Robin McKay, however, would like to purchase a vowel. She's a psychologist and co-author of Smart Girls in the 21st Century, and she theorizes that women in real life who date bad boys are seeking liberation from the pressure of being seen as good. She states, girls possess a range of traits like rebelliousness. These traits are typically repressed during childhood, as females are socialized to be compliant and agreeable. If a girl's inner life is unexpressed, she may be drawn to a bad boy as a way of vicariously expressing her own inner rebel. Now, of course, this can't be a catch-all reason for the bad boy, good girl phenomenon. Like most theories, it's just one way to look at a very broad topic. However, it made me think, aside from My Immortal, which is always going to be an anomaly no matter what we're talking about, the women being seduced by our brooding leading men in both the Twilight fanfiction and Dark, the Harry Styles fanfiction, are painfully good. The same goes for Tessa, the leading lady in After, yet another dark Harry Styles fanfic. They aim to please others, are generally shy and likable, yet they draw in these dark, oftentimes dangerous men without even trying. And without fail, it is shown either through their flustered reactions or circling thoughts that they themselves are also transfixed by the darkness of their male counterparts. Perhaps the part of themselves that they can't portray lest they be shunned by family and friends. The point that they are total opposites, almost romantic foils of each other, is driven home time and time again until we as readers can recite it verbatim. And finally, once that's drilled into our heads, the author shows that the foil relationship they have constructed is a vessel in which the two main characters experience both sexual and personal awakening. Their true, unadulterated selves are revealed through this combative relationship, and the purpose all along was to liberate the woman from the confines of being digestible or palatable. Holy shit, did I just validate fanfiction? I'm not sure how much merit this next statement has, coming from a girl who has read Voldemort fanfiction before. Even with its flaws, fanfiction is undeniably useful for a number of things. Not only for socialization and community building, but for the skill level that one can acquire and the ability for writers and readers alike to introduce new experiences into their lives. Some people use fanfiction as an escape from the reality they can't bear to live in anymore, and some people use it to explore different avenues of sexuality and romance they may be unable to explore in their own personal lives. Like with many pop culture staples, it of course has its downsides, the discomfort celebrities and real-life people must feel knowing their likeness is being used as crude characters, and the toxic tropes that lend many young readers warped perceptions of love and sex. But at the same time, it does have its roots wrapped snugly around good things too. It may not be a biblical fanfiction or a Shakespearean play, but fanfiction's mark on pop culture isn't wholly a bruise. Sometimes it's a love bite too. As Shannon Chamberlain notes, fanfiction's reputation as a unserious form has in this very way made possible the deep dives and often moving explorations of human sexuality and romantic love that permeate the genre, even as fanfiction itself becomes less artistically stigmatized. I'm going to be known as the Voldemort girl now, aren't I?